Everyone, welcome back to another very exciting Adobe Live. I am your host, Jesus Ramirez, and today we're going to do generative AI for compositing in Photoshop. We're going to talk a lot about the new features in Adobe Photoshop for GenFill AI. GenFill AI is now out of beta, which means that you can use it in the full version of Photoshop. Most importantly, it's available for commercial use. So I'm going to show you several compositing techniques you can use to create amazing composites. By the way, let me know in the chat where you're tuning in from. I'd love to interact with you guys. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, leave them in the chat and I'll try to address them as soon as I can. I see Carol in the chat, Oliver, General Kenobi, thank you so much for being here today. Even though this is a Photoshop stream, we're also going to talk a little bit about the Firefly website and why I like to use it for certain things and then import those assets into Photoshop. Again, hello to everybody tuning in from the chat. I'll keep looking over and looking to see if there's any questions. So feel free to drop any comments or questions in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. I'm streaming from the beautiful San Francisco Bay Area in Morgan Hill, California. We have Jacqueline from Florida. Hi, nice to see you. Patrick from Switzerland. Hello. So I'm going to switch over to my screen now. And as I mentioned before, we're going to start with the Adobe Firefly website. Here in the Adobe Firefly site, you can access it by going into firefly.adobe.com, firefly.adobe.com. From this page, you can use several of these modules to generate images using AI. We have text to image, generative fill, which is also what we have in Photoshop, text effects, generative recolor, and there's more modules and exploration that you can check out here if you like. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this text to brush module does. It looks very interesting, so I can't wait for Adobe to release that. But anyway, let's start with text to image. When you click on generate, you will go into this page. It will show you several examples that you can just click on. For example, if you like this example here, you can click on view examples and you will see the prompt and the generated images alongside the different settings that were used to generate this image. So you can start with that if you like. I'm just going to start with something new. And if you look at the thumbnail for this stream, we have a dog standing in front of buildings and there's like a sunflower behind that. So we're going to try to build that using elements from Firefly and also put it all together inside of Photoshop. So what I'm going to start with is just a very simple prompt. I'm going to call it, let's see, sky. You know what? I'll call it city with skyscrapers, if I can spell that correctly, with a sun flare. And I'll just hit enter to generate. By default, Photoshop will go into the art option. I don't necessarily want that. I want a photo. I want it to look photorealistic. These are very good images, but I want them to look more photorealistic. So I'll select this option. Once I do that, notice that I have this box here where I can click on that X and remove it if I want to, but I want to keep that photo content type. I can also select an aspect ratio. By default, we're looking at a 1:1 aspect ratio, but I recommend going to 16:9. Even if you want the final output to be a square, I wouldn't start with a square. I want to have that flexibility to move it around if I need to. So I definitely recommend using the 16:9 aspect ratio on all your generations, just because you're going to get more pixels. And from there, you can crop if you want. So you have a little more flexibility. And what I'm going to do now is scroll down to where it says color and tone. And from here, I want it to have a warm tone. The lighting, I want the golden hour lighting. So I'll select golden hour. And for composition, I will choose a narrow depth of field, and then I'll click on generate and see what that gives me. And my goal is to create the background that I'm going to use for this composite. So I want to create the background, and then I'm going to create the foreground. I can, of course, create a prompt that includes both the background and foreground together, but I don't think that will be the best result. I want to have the flexibility of moving my subject around the composite. So having the background separate from the foreground gives me more flexibility, and that's what I want. And this all looks pretty good. I do like a lot of these. I like this one here on the bottom right. I like this one on the top left. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the chat. Let me see if there's any questions so far. Cool. Awesome. So yeah, no questions. But if you have any comments, feel free to leave them in the chat. I think, you know what? I'm going to download several of these. I'm going to click on this option, on this button, and select download. And I'm going to download that onto my computer, and to keep things organized, I'll just create an Adobe Live folder, and that's what I will put all my downloads. So I'll put that one there. And I don't know, I kind of like the one on the bottom right as well. So I'll download that one and put it in that same folder. There it is. And maybe I'll type on top of a building with a city with skyscrapers in the background with a sunflare. We'll see if that gives us any better results. And it should take a second just to generate, and we'll see what we can use. If not, we can use that same. Yeah, so these are also pretty good. Kind of like this one because we can see a little bit of the rooftop on this building. The background is pretty blurry, which is what I wanted. We have that lens flare. That's pretty good. We'll save this one as well, and we'll see which one we work with. Also, another cool thing that you can do with Adobe Firefly that I don't see a lot of people doing is creating overlays. So let me just go back to this first page here so I can get rid of all the options and settings that I had and start from scratch. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to type lens flare on black background. So this is going to be just an overlay that I'm going to place on top of my image to create the illusion that that photo has a lens flare, like one of these guys right here. And again, I'm going to go with the widescreen mode, select photo as my content type, and click on generate. So this is a good way of generating overlays and things like that. And of course, I'm just building up the assets that I'm going to use to composite in Photoshop. And I like this one here on the left. So I'm just going to download this and click on download. That will go into that same folder where I'm keeping all my assets. Fantastic. Now let's work on the foreground. Let's do a steampunk dog. Steampunk dog with a leather jacket. And I want to have a photo in widescreen. Perfect. I'm going to click on generate and we'll see the result. Let me know in the chat if you ever use Firefly to generate overlays. I'm curious to see what other overlays you found. I've done lens flares. That's the one that seems to work the best. I haven't had any luck with rain yet, but hopefully we will. Wow, these guys all look really good. I kind of like this guy here on the left. So I'm going to download him and then I can click on generate again and see if we get any different results. But what do you think? I think these all look really, really good. Let me click on refresh to generate a few more variations. There's a question from YouTube. Thank you for sharing it, Cody Bear. The question is, hi, Jesus. I would like to know if I can put my own brand of clothing to an AI model or AI made mannequin. What's the best approach for this? So you wouldn't be able to like, type up your brand and say, hey, I want my brand of jacket on this mannequin with AI, unfortunately. You can, of course, use old Photoshop techniques to Photoshop it onto the mannequin, but you wouldn't be able to do it with AI with a simple prompt. You have to use old school Photoshop techniques to manipulate that into the mannequin. Cool. So I don't know. I kind of like now the one on the bottom right here looks really good. So I'm going to download him as well. So, oops, I keep clicking on the edit button, but it's I have to do it on this download button. By the way, if you're not a Photoshop user or you really don't, want to spend time in Photoshop, you can click on this edit button. And from here, you have abilities to remove background, add text, and even make adjustments. We're going to do all that in Photoshop. But of course, if you wanted to do it in Adobe Express, you can certainly do so over here. Anyway, so now that we have these assets, we can start putting it together in Photoshop and then make more generations inside of Photoshop. I just wanted to generate the primary generations, the primary objects in the scene in Firefly, just because it's faster and I have all these extra options that I don't in Photoshop, and it just makes it easier. But you can certainly try to do all this in Photoshop. Again, in my opinion, it's easier to do it in Firefly and just bring it into Photoshop. Now you can go into File, Open, and open up these images here, and I can just literally click and drag on all of them, click on Open, and it will open all of them in Photoshop. So here we go. These are our images. You can click on this double-sided arrow to select the different images. I'm going to delete this document that doesn't have anything because we don't need it. And now I can analyze which of these photos I'm going to use for the background. And again, I'm liking this one a lot, but I'm also liking this one. So maybe I can work with both and then decide later. So I'm going to click and drag this photo onto this tab, hold shift and drop it in the middle. And then I can just close these files because we don't need them anymore. The lens flare, I guess I can bring into this image as well. So click and drag it onto this image, hold shift and drop it. And what I'm going to do with this lens flare layer is change the blending mode to screen and then just, place it into position. And I can press Control T on Windows, Command T on the Mac to transform. If your pivot point or reference point is disabled, you can click on this icon on the top left to enable it. And then you can place it anywhere you want. And that allows you to rotate or pivot from that point. See that? So then I can just place that there and then hold Shift and Alt and scale from that spot. And then I know we have a harsh line here. There's a couple things we can do. We can go into the adjustment layer icon, select either curves, levels, brightness and contrast, or exposure, any one of these. For me, I don't know, curves or levels is the ones I usually go for. We'll just go with levels because it's easier to understand. You can click on this icon to clip it to the layer below. That means that this levels adjustment layer is only affecting the lens flare layer. So, by the way, I like to name my layers just so I can say organize. So I'll call this layer lens flare. And here's a tip. When you press the tab key, Photoshop moves to the layer below and it activates it so you can rename it. So I'll call this one BG1. And then the next one I can't rename because it's locked, but I can unlock it by tapping or clicking on the lock here. And I can call it BG2. So we'll see which one we like better, but we'll just start with this one now. And this layer right here, lens flare, I'm going to create a layer mask. Actually, sorry, I missed a step. On the levels adjustment layer, I can start making it darker to try to see how it's going to blend. So the darker you make it, the less visible it is, and the brighter you make it, the more visible it is. So invisible, making it black, visible, making it white. And you can just adjust it accordingly. When you have something that works, you can go into the lens flare layer, create a layer mask, and paint with black. Black hides, white reveals with a layer mask. I'm just trying to hide that seam. And all I'm really doing is just making that lens flare. Cool. By the way, you don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I don't like to keep layer masks that don't do anything because I might accidentally paint over them and just make my composite not look right, and it might take me a while to figure out what I did. So out of habit, I like to just delete the layer masks that don't have anything that I'm not using. There's no reason to keep them, so I will delete them. I'm also going to save this file so that if something happens, we can come back to it so we don't lose everything. Let me see if there's any comments in the chat. Cool. A little bit of steam pump goes a long way. Resistance is futile. That's so funny. Cool. No questions. Awesome. So now let's bring the dog into this scene. So what I'm going to do now is first I'm going to click on the remove background button, and hopefully we have a really good selection of the dog. And yeah, I think Photoshop did a fantastic job with just one click, really. If I hold Alt on Windows, Option in the Mac, and click on the layer mask, I can see it. I'm analyzing the mask to make sure that it doesn't have any weird edges or anything like that. And I think it looks really great. I think that from this point on, we can simply just click and drag him over to this area here. So now I got to start thinking about scale. If I really want him to look that tall, if I want to use what background I want to use. Now that I have the dog in here, I think I like that one better. So I think we'll just stick with that background. And maybe I can move the lens flare around so that it matches the scene better. And also rotate the flare to see how it will affect the dog. I don't know, maybe something like this. I really like the sun rays that is creating here. So yeah, I think I like that. And maybe for this scene, I might want to make it just a little bit darker so it's not so strong. But I still have these light rays above the building, which I think look fantastic. Let me know what you think. And actually, you know what? I'm realizing that I just made a mistake. There's also light rays coming up here, right up here. So this cannot be this low because then that means there's two suns. So we can just move it up a little bit, and then we have light rays going in more directions, which I like. Cool. It says it looks like a kid's movie. I agree. It definitely looks like a kid's movie. What will you call this kid's movie? Let me know in the chat. Cool. All right. So now we can start working on blending these two elements together. We can go into the dog layer here. And again, I'll call it dog just so that we stay organized. I don't know what this layer has. It doesn't seem like it has anything, so I'll just delete it. And what I'm going to do now is make sure that I'm happy with the composition, and then I'll start doing some more gen fill around the dog to try to get some highlights or some rim lights around them. So we'll see if that works. The first thing I want to do is press Control T, Command T to transform, drag the reference point and just put it here. That way, when I hold Shift and Alt, it scales down from that part of the dog. So maybe right about here. I'm just trying to scale him so he doesn't look so big. And, I'm kind of trying to place him in the third of the canvas here, trying to follow the rule of thirds, just try to create a more interesting composition. If I place him in the middle, he doesn't look as good. If I place him too far to the left, he doesn't look as good either. So, one of the thirds will be good, like that third, or maybe this third. And I think that looks much, much better. That's an old TV show, My Three Sons. That's right. Cool. So I'm going to create a new curves adjustment layer and clip it to the layer below. I'm going to show you how to do this in two ways because there's like a more advanced way and a not so advanced way, but they both look pretty good. So I'm going to delete the layer mask, as I mentioned before. I don't like to keep layer masks if they're not going to control anything. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to brighten him up a little bit. And I'm going to, by the way, in case you don't know, with a curves adjustment layer, you can think this as a dimmer switch. Like, at home, when you might have a dimmer switch where you drag the light up and it makes the room brighter, you drag the switch down and it makes the room darker. That's basically what this is. When you click and drag up, you add more light to the image. And when you drag down, you subtract light, making it darker. So this is a simple way of thinking about it. So if I want to make something brighter, I can just click and drag up from which tone. So these are the shadows, the midtones and the highlights, or blacks, midtones, and whites, however you want to think about it. The point is that I'm trying to just brighten him up a little bit. And I can also do the same thing in the individual channels, red, green, and blue. What this means is when you drag up, you add light in that channel's color, in this case, red. If you go down, you subtract light, making it darker in the opposite color. So in this case, green. I'm sorry, not green, magenta. Not green. And not even magenta, cyan. Oh my God, it's too early. What am I saying? RGB, red, green, and blue. Cyan, magenta, and yellow. I don't know why it took me 3 tries to get it. I think it's too early for me. I just woke up, guys. But anyway, so red, and when you subtract, you subtract light in the opposite color, in this case, cyan. And then with green, you drag up and you get that color. Green, you drag down, you get the opposite color, and that's magenta. And with blue, of course, you drag up, you get blue, you drag down, you get yellow. So in this case, I'm going to drag the blue down just a little bit to introduce some of those yellow tones to the image. And, you can adjust these in all the channels as well. Like by dragging green down, I'm also introducing a little bit of magenta. And it just sort of helps the color look more realistic in this case, because, if we have a bright yellow scene, he's going to have some of those color tones in him. But yeah. Kara said, come on, Jesus, it's 9 a.m. for you. Yeah, but I usually wake up like at noon. No, I'm just kidding. I don't wake up at noon. I usually wake up at 8. So I've been awake for about an hour. Haven't had my coffee yet, though. But anyway, so this is the composite so far. And at this point, and I said I was going to show you another way. So the other way of doing this is by creating a selective color adjustment layer, going into the neutrals, and then just adding or subtracting colors. So in this case, we're working with cyan, magenta, and yellow. And as we just discussed, those are the opposites of RGB. So by subtracting cyan, you get red. Obviously, adding cyan gives you cyan. By subtracting magenta, you get green. And by subtracting yellow, you get blue. So what I would do here is maybe add a little bit of yellow, a little bit of magenta, and subtract cyan, and you get something that's very similar. So that might be easier for you if you're starting out. The curves adjustment layer definitely gives you more flexibility, but it's not as intuitive. So up to you. So this is a result with one, and this is a result with the other. Completely up to you how you do it. I'm going to stick with the curves adjustment layer. Cool. So now that we have this, we can start using generative fill to make further adjustments to this image. For example, I really want to have that bright sun behind this ear. So let me see if by making a selection here, we can generate that rim lighting. I'm going to click on generate. I'm just going to leave it blank, and hopefully Photoshop is smart to figure it out. And if not, then I'm going to have to type in rim light or something like that. So I've had success with both, where I just make a selection, I generate, and it creates rim light. And then I've had success where it's not working, but then I have success when I actually type in rim light. So we'll see in this case which one works. And yeah, it doesn't see it. It's basically just remove that area. So that's definitely not what we want. So what I'm going to type now is just type in fur rim light and see if that works. Police dog named Yoga. He is the canine that quickly detained the fugitive after 13 days of search. I like it. Okay. All right. Not the best, to be quite honest, but we'll see. Now, here's a trick I've done in the past. When I can't get it to work, and I don't know if this is going to work, but something else I've done is I've actually made like a really, really bright fake light, because Photoshop looks at the composite. So what I do is I just like really paint with, whoops, what am I doing here? Oh yeah, I don't need this generative fill layer, and I need to paint it on top. And this one is clipped to the layer below. Control Alt G to clip layers. But anyway, so notice how I just painted that really bright light. And I know there's like a bright light next to him already. So I'm not exactly sure why it's not working, but I'll try again. I'm just going to go, and I'll probably go in deeper this time, and then just type rim light on fur and see if that works. But I usually paint like a really bright light next to something, and sometimes it gives me the rim light. We'll see if that works. Oh, wow. It's really not working today. Well, this is the beauty of live streams, because usually something doesn't work, and then something doesn't work. We just have to keep moving on. So how would I paint rim light in something that AI doesn't want to generate for me? Well, there's a lot of ways of doing it in Photoshop. What I would do is I would start with a new curves adjustment layer, maybe brighten this up like so, and then maybe I would try a blending mode, like, I don't know, like overlay, and then just make that brighter like so. The layer mask is completely white, which means that that effect is going to be applied to the entire layer. So you can just fill with black to hide everything that this adjustment layer is adjusting. Now I can selectively paint things back in. You can use your mouse, or you can use a Wacom tablet. If you have a Wacom tablet, this becomes a little easier and more intuitive, because you can use pressure sensitivity by tapping on this icon here, or you can click on this icon and then choose something like shape dynamics and adjust the size by pen pressure, whatever you like. So I can now have pressure sensitivity, paint with white to reveal, that rim light, and spend as much time as I want painting that rim light, and this is before and after. You can see that there. If you wanted to get a little more creative, what you can do is go into this gear icon and select legacy brushes. I don't know why Photoshop hides these brushes, but when you go to legacy brushes, it'll create a new brush preset folder way at the bottom called legacy brushes. You see it here. And inside of there's one called grass, dune grass, this one here. And you can use this to fake fur. So I'm gonna make this larger than I need to, just so that you can see it. But it usually doesn't need to be this large. So let me make that a little bit larger. There we go. So I can just, I'm going to create a new layer, fill it with white, and I'll paint with black so you can see what I'm doing. So this is what that looks like. But I want it to be completely black or completely white, depending on what I'm painting with. So I'm going to click on this icon and I'm going to disable color dynamics. That way, it's only one single color now. Also, I'm going to disable the transfer so that it doesn't change the opacity. So I need to disable that. Why is it not turning off? And it's still doing, oh, sorry, it's because this is enabled. So that's okay. It's okay if I have this, I can decide to enable it or disable it from here, from the options bar. This is what this controls right here, this checkbox. So it's okay. I'm also going to change the, actually, no, I'll leave the shape dynamics. The only thing I will change is the angle control. I'm going to change it to direction. So if I paint right, notice how the hair is standing up. But if I paint left, the hair is going down. So basically the hair goes in the direction that I paint, and that's what I want. So now I can go back into this document here and I can paint with white, and I can just sort of create the illusion. And again, I'm going a lot bigger than what I need to go so that you can see the result there. Oops. I think I'm going too far in and I'm in the wrong layer. That's why it's not working. What layer do I need to be in? I need to be on this layer. There we go. But you get the idea, right? This is a lot bigger than what I need, but you get the idea. And also, if you really want to make sure that the fur looks realistic, make sure that you follow the actual direction of the fur. And one of the better ways of doing that is a little more time consuming. You will have to go into the options here and just turn that off on the angle jitter, and then just figure out what the angle is. So right now, if I paint down, that's not going to work. And I can use the arrow keys. See the arrow? See how the brush is rotating if I tap on the arrow keys? So now I can find something that works. And again, I need to be in the right layer because I'm not. This layer here. And now I can paint in the direction of the fur. And if it doesn't work, keep rotating until you get something that works. But I think you get the idea. And of course, what we're trying to do now is sort of fake that rim light on the dog. And I think, even though we were very loose or whatever, I think it still works. Sometimes when I do something like this, I like to add yet another layer. And this is just like a strong highlight. And I'll call it that, strong highlight. And this is the rim light here. And what I'm going to do now is on this strong highlight layer, press Control-Alt-G, Command-Option-G on the Mac to clip it to the layer below. And then on the brush tool, I'm going to go just to like a regular brush, something that's normal, like soft round. And I'm just going to paint with white. And I'm going to be heavy-handed so you can see how this works. I'm going to paint with white all around the dog here, paint with white. And I know it doesn't look very good, but when you double-click to the side of the layer and bring up the layer style window under blending mode, you can change this to linear dodge add here, linear dodge add, and uncheck transparency shapes layers. And look at the difference of the highlight. See the difference of the highlight? It just makes it much, much better. And you can reduce the fill, not the opacity, to reduce that intensity. And I think that just does a much better job of making that rim light look realistic. And more importantly, here on the top, I didn't really work at the bottom, so it doesn't look that good at the bottom, but definitely the top. So let me just erase the bottom part here because I didn't really do anything. So right up here, that, in my opinion, looks better. But anyway, that's only if you want to keep it. And if not, you don't have to keep it. But that's something that I like to do when adding rim lights, just to help them become more intense. Now, the next, I got about 30 minutes, I believe. So I got another thing that I want to show you, but I want to finish this one first. And usually what I like to do is, at this point, if you want to, you can start generating any other elements. So for example, maybe we can add goggles to this dog. So by the way, if you see that generative fill is not active like this, it's grayed out. That's because you're on a layer mask or an adjustment layer. Just go to something that's not one of those layers, something that's a pixel layer, and click on generative fill and then generate whatever you want to generate. So I'm just going to type in steampunk goggles and generate, and we'll see if we get some steampunk goggles. And it'll take a second here, and we should get some really cool looking goggles. All right. Let me know what you guys think. These are all super cool. Oh my God. I don't know. I kind of like the red ones better. I like the red ones. So I think we'll keep you know what? I like the red ones, but maybe I like them in blue better. So if you ever generate something like this, what you can now do is press, oops, I didn't want to create a layer. Sorry about that. You can go into the hue and saturation adjustment layer, clip it to the layer below, click on colorize, and we're going to make the goggles blue. But then on the layer mask, just press Control I, Command I to inverse, which will make it into a black layer mask, which will hide everything. And you can just now simply paint with white on that layer mask in the areas that you want the blue to appear. So I think I might like blue better in this case. So we'll see. I don't know. Do you guys like blue? What color should we make them? I don't know. Now that I see it, I don't know if I like blue as much. Maybe the blue was too intense. Maybe reduce the saturation a little bit. Yeah, I kind of like that. That's pretty good. What do you guys think? Blue or red? Oh, Arak. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Arakia likes the red. Red. Oh, people are liking the red. Oh, one. Yeah, like 3D glasses, right? One red, one blue. Okay, cool. Cool. Let's do that. I like that idea. One red, one blue. So we'll just make this one red. There we go. He's got like 3D glasses now. Cool. Yeah. I guess opinions are all over the place. Some people like blue, some people like red, some people like blue and red. Yeah. Cool. I don't know which. I haven't done the math or counted to see which one got the most votes. So we'll just do one blue, one red. But anyway, the point is that at this point, you can just start adding any elements you want to this image, whatever makes you happy, using GenFill AI, just like I did with the goggles here. At this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all these layers into a smart object. In case you don't know, a smart object is a container that allows you to apply non-destructive adjustments, distortions, filters, or transformations. In other words, you can always come back and make changes to them. If you need to, they're all non-destructive. Cool. So the way that I like to finish my composites is by going into the camera raw filter and just applying global adjustments. Now I'm going to treat this as a photo. And the reason that happened is because when I made my smart object, they were all just regular layers. But if I put them all into a group, press Control A, create a layer mask, and then convert it into a smart object, I shouldn't have that issue. Let's see if that works. Filter, camera, raw filter, and there it is. Actually, I don't know why it's doing that. Let me try cropping the image. It's like a little weird glitch. It shouldn't show the edges if it's in a smart object, but let me do that again. Filter, camera, raw filter. There we go. I just didn't want to have that extra transparency around there. And I just wanted to work on this image as if it were a single image. And what I can now do is add effects like grain to make this look more realistic. We need to add a little bit of grain because in a real photo, you would see grain. Anything that is too smooth just doesn't look realistic and it looks very digital. So we're trying to make this look as realistic as possible. I'll add a little bit of a vignette. And when I add vignettes, I like to click on this icon here to expand the vignette options. And I like to increase the highlights so that they come through. And what I mean by that here, I'll create a very strong vignette and then I'll reduce the highlights to 0, which is default. But when I increase the highlights, notice how they come through the vignette. That's what I want. Obviously not with such an intense vignette. So something like this. And We can now work with the basic adjustments. Maybe I can warm up the image even more. I can adjust the contrast, adjust anything I like, maybe bring up the shadows a little bit and increase vibrance. The difference between vibrance and saturation is that vibrance adds saturation to pixels that are not so highly saturated. It also protects skin tones, while saturation adds saturation equally amongst all colors. We can also do color grading if you want. Maybe we can add a little bit of a orange to the shadows to make that warm effect even stronger. So I think maybe somewhere around here works. So this is without any of the adjustments, and this is with all the adjustments. I can press OK to apply the adjustments. And this is a smart object. So if you wanted to continue making adjustments, you can always double click on the camera raw filter label and continue making other adjustments like sharpening. You can click and drag sharpening to the right, but then also hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and drag the masking slider to the right so that you can see the mask. White, wherever you see white, that's where the sharpening effect will be applied. So in this case, by default, it's going to be applied to the entire image, but usually you don't want to apply sharpening to areas that don't have detail. So drag the masking to the right so that only the areas with detail, the edges, have that sharpening effect applied to it. So I think that looks much, much better. And I can press OK to apply the new adjustments. Let me know if you have any questions before we move on to the next example. Let me see. My tools weren't showing up until today in the new version. I'm glad you have the tools now, Carol. Burning Man dog to the rescue. That's right, Paco. Those people definitely needed rescuing this year at Burning Man. That was pretty sad. Cool. So we have this dog. So now I'm going to show you guys a personal project that I was working on recently. So I know that some people may know, other people may not know, but I'm actually getting married on September 23rd, which is, God, like 9 days away, which is not that far away. So I'm getting married in Kansas City, Missouri, where my fiance is from. And do you guys know how in like weddings, they usually have baby pictures of the couple, and they just put them there so people can see how the couple looked like when they were babies. So then I thought, oh, maybe I should Photoshop my fiance and me together as babies. So I did that, and I used a lot of Genfill AI for that. So let me show you guys the process. And this took me a lot of hours to complete, and definitely not enough time to complete it all in one stream. But I will show you the final result. So I'll show you first how I started. So I started with a photo of me. That's me holding my dog Duke when I was about 9 years old. And I used to live in Alameda, California. So you can see it's a very old photo, but I can use Genfill AI to fix it, right? I can use the lasso tool, and I can come in here and just make a selection out of any of these damaged areas and click on Generative Fill and click on Generate, and it'll just generate the imperfections away, the damages. And thank you so much. I'm reading a lot of congratulations in the chat. Thank you. I appreciate that. But anyway, so obviously I'm not going to have the time to completely restore this photo now, but I just want to show you the process and now show you what I ended up with. And, you get different variations and pick the one that you want, you like best. In this case, almost all of them are going to be near perfect. So I don't really bother at looking at the variations. So, this takes a little bit of time, just making those selections and, generating the damage that the photo has. I believe this photo was taken like in 92 or 91. So fairly old photo. And I can come in here and fix all these imperfections. Click on generate. I'm not going to worry about all of them just because I want to have more time to show you something else. Oh, see, and for some reason, it violated the guidelines trying to fix this. I'm not really sure why, but if you try again, maybe you'll get it. And if not, for something like that, using the spot healing brush tool or the remove tool will work just as well. See, like for some reason, it just doesn't like making adjustments to faces. So what I'll do now is use the remove tool. And with the remove tool, just with a very small brush, I should be able to get good results. I'm just going to make selection or selection there and apply the changes. And we'll see what the remove tool does. Yeah, that clearly didn't work. All right, let's try the spot healing brush tool. And this should work, I hope. So spot healing brush tool. Okay, not perfect, but again, not terrible. Especially for the stream. I want to get to the GenFill AI. Great. So we'll just assume that this is like the perfect photo, right? So I'm just going to copy that and put it in a new document. And I also found a photo of my fiance hugging her sister when she was a little baby. So my fiance is here on the right, the one in the hat. Her name is Bailey. So that's Bailey holding her baby sister, Julia. So I thought, oh, maybe we can make a photo of me hugging Bailey. How do we do that? So I was able to place these two images together and use GenFill to, make them match. So I figured that she has a much better background than what I did. So I just made a selection out of me, like so. And I was wearing horrible sweatpants, my God. And I guess I kept my hand, but then ultimately I used the Gen AI hand. And I just masked out the rest. And I didn't need the selection to be perfect just yet. I just needed to get everything together, right? So like, how can I make this work? And I'm going to expand the image so I have more room to work with, right? And then at the end, I can crop everything. So I know I need to remove Julia from that photo and then generate more pixels here. So what I need to do is start generating those areas. So then I'm going to try to remove little baby Julia from this photo here by using GenFill AI. And again, I'm being very loose because I don't know what's going to work. I don't know what's not going to work. So I don't want to spend too much time just being like super precise, and super perfect. So this is why it took a lot of time to complete the final version, because I spend just so much time experimenting with it. And then I gotta make sure I keep an eye on the time so I can show you the final version before we're done. But oh my God, that's a whole nother baby. We don't need a whole nother baby. So what I'm gonna do there is just in the prompt, I do have to put something in. Sometimes when you just do when you don't like put anything in, it might generate another thing that we don't want. So in this case, I don't know what to put. I want to put I'm just gonna put the word fabric, and hopefully it's smart enough to add the fabric from the couch that's back there. I don't know. And I don't think it liked that one either. So let me see. Oh, you know what? I think I remember what I did. What I did is I started with this, and I actually did a little bit of color matching first. So I'm just going to do a little bit of color matching. I'm not going to talk about it too much because we talked about it a little bit ago with the previous example. And I know I ended up not using that hand. So I removed that. And I know that with Bailey, we didn't keep the baby. So I'm just going to like literally just delete it. And then I'll use GenFill to like sort of merge the edges. So we didn't use baby Julia. And that was a horrible selection, I know. And we just delete this layer here, and we'll delete baby Julia. And now that there's no baby there, I think GenFill might cooperate. So let me just like fill it in a little bit at a time. I'm trying to see if there's any questions. Oh, I see Howard in the chat. Hey, Howard, how's it going? My good friend, Howard Pinsky. Good to see you, my friend. Yeah. And, like it's not super important which hair we keep, but now we got her whole face there, which is good. And then now maybe I can start building the couch back in. Generative fill. And that's going to fill that area in pretty soon. And there we go. See, we have to do it a little bit at a time. And that'll make it a whole lot easier for me to like composite myself in. But you can see why this was very time consuming because yeah, even though that finger doesn't look good, I like the rest of the dress because it just, it takes time for you to figure out what prompts are going to work, what selections you're going to make, and all that good stuff. So this is basically what I did on the image that I will show you guys in a moment. There we go. I think this is good enough. And then I need to expand her body as well. Maybe go this far out, see what this gives us. But what I'm really doing here is just giving me enough room to work with so that I can then use traditional Photoshop compositing techniques to bring it all together. There we go. Look at that. That's fantastic. Let me see what kind of like that one better. I don't know. Let me see. Yeah, I kind of like this one better, even though I kind of don't like her shoulder there. I'll redo the shoulder. And what I'm going to do is once I'm done with all this, I'm just going to put it all basically into one layer, treat it as a single image. I don't need to keep all those variations and all that. So that looks pretty good. Yeah, this looks great. So I'm just going to select all these, press Control E on Windows, Command E on the Mac to just, now they're just like a single pixel layer. And that's what I need. I don't need to worry about anything else. And then here we go. There I am. And now I have to worry about like scaling myself and making it sure that I match this particular scene. And, so I'm trying to remember how I originally scaled it because it did take me some time to figure out how I wanted to scale her so that it matched the whole scene. So I think what I did is I just kind of went this way and then completed her hat. Yeah, and then completed her. Yeah, so I'm going to complete her hat. There's something I didn't do that I guess I needed to do. So let me go back and complete her hat. And the original photo has this weird stuff here on top. So I'm just going to delete that because I don't need it. And then I'm going to go here and then just click on Generative Fill, click on Generate, and hopefully that will complete the hat. All right, that first one works pretty good. So there you go. We have a complete hat. We have her there. And now it's time to Photoshop us together. And by the way, this is the same age difference between us. She was about 6 years old there, and I was about 9 or 10. So it's the same age difference that would have been in real life if we knew each other. And I can also like maybe rotate it a little bit and maybe bring her in more like that. And I'm gonna put everything into a group here, and then I'm gonna apply a layer mask to that group so that I can then paint with black and sort of get the hat in there like so. There we go. And then I'm going to use Gen Fill to like make sure that everything matches even better. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to say, kind of like, I'm trying to like make almost like the shape of a hand because it'll fill it better. I think I feel that when I draw what I want to generate, it does a good job. And I'm just going to put in the word hand and just see what happens. And I'm hoping that it'll just be a hand on her shoulder. And actually, while this is loading, I'm gonna bring up so I'm sure now people are wondering like, what does she look like now? Okay, so this is not bad. I'm just gonna try hand and then the word hug, and then hopefully it's hugging her body. Um, Okay, these hands are not working. Okay, that hand has nail polish on it. I'm going to click generate one more time, and hopefully we can get something that works before we have to go in about 6 minutes. But I'll show you the final result. Okay, I'm liking these better. All right, for the sake of time, we're just going to say that that hand is perfect. But I can now continue to generate, these other areas. And whatever works, I keep. Whatever doesn't work, I keep trying until it works. Grab my strong hand. Where's that from, Howard? Is that a reference that I don't get? Oh, guidelines. Again, I'm not sure why that happened, but it is what it is. And maybe I'll just make a different selection, maybe smaller. I don't know, and try to get it to work. Okay, so there you go. That doesn't work. Anyway, I'm going to switch over to the file that I completed. That way I can talk about it more since we only have about 5 minutes left. But that's basically what I just did. A lot of trial and error. It took a bunch of time to complete, but I'll show you the final one, which is this one. And um, a couple things that I did here. That rim light right here on my sweater and my head and all that is exactly what I was talking about earlier. I generated this fake sun, like super bright sun to the side, and then I used Gen Fill to say, hey, generate this part of my hair that looks like it has sun coming from the left hand side, and it did a really good job on my hair. And then I continued to do the Gen Fill on my neck and my arms, and it just did a really good job in generating those highlights. And it did the same thing for Bailey's hat. And as you can see, this is the result. It's using GenFill AI. The reason that we use that background, or that I decided to use that background, was that the very first picture my fiance and I took together was in the Grizzly Peak in Berkeley, California, overlooking the Bay Area. San Francisco's back here. This is Berkeley, Oakland, Alameda, all that stuff. So that was the first photo we had of us together. So I took that background and actually used GenFill to remove us from that photo so that we can have a clean plate. Maybe I can do that if I saved it here. I guess I didn't save it here. But yeah, it was just a clean plate that I used. Here it is. There you go. That's the clean plate. So the original image, and I didn't save it, had a Bailey and I here taking a selfie, the first photo of us together, but I just removed us and used that as a clean plate for that. So yeah, and then for those of you that are wondering, this is Bailey and I in our engagement photo. So that's what we look like now. I guess you guys know what I look like, but maybe you don't know what she looks like. Anyway, but yeah. And another thing that I did here is I did experiment a lot with the hand until I got a hand that actually worked. I spent a lot of time getting the shoulders and the arms to actually work, but I couldn't really do that with just the regular fill generation. So what I ended up doing was, and I think I can show you here, what I ended up doing with that arm, if I can find it. As you can see, it's a lot of layers that were used to create this. What I ended up using with the arm was just a transformation because I couldn't really bend the arm the way that I wanted to. So what I ended up doing was just using Puppet Warp. If you go into Edit, Puppet Warp, you have that shape there. And obviously I did a lot of more gen fills on top of it, but I had to basically, rotate the arm in the clothing using different distortion techniques so that I can get it to work. The point is that you can use GenFill to get you most of the way there, and then use traditional Photoshop techniques to finalize the composite. And like I mentioned earlier, the last thing that I usually do is apply everything, give a smart filter to everything. Basically the same things that I showed you guys earlier. I did a little bit of sharpening. I did a little bit of color mixing and the effects. We talked about grain. We talked about vignetting. We talked about the highlights. I did that to this image as well. So I always like to take the composite and just apply it as apply a camera raw filter as a single image, because I think it at the very end, it'll looks more cohesive and it looks much better when you just treat it all as a single photo rather than try to just make it look cohesive by applying individual layers to everything. You should do that. You should apply individual layers, adjustment layers to everything to try to make things come together. But at the end, I like to throw something on top of everything at once to bring it together even more. Actually, another thing that I did here that I should mention is the bench here. This is all Gen Fill. All I really did is I typed in wooden bench, like made a selection and it generated that, and then made another selection and did it on this side. And it created a very convincing wooden bench with the highlight of the sun that matches the lighting. But one of the most important things I wanted to point out is that the rim lighting was made just by making selections and saying rim light around hair, just like it didn't work earlier in the tutorial. It worked perfectly for this photo, but it only worked perfectly when I created this fake highlight right up here, try to make it look like the sun. So I was sort of trying to trick AI to think that the sun was much closer and brighter than what it really was, to try to create these rim lighting effect along the subjects. Cool. Looks like a yeah, looks like a VHS. Well, exactly. It was shot like around the time that VHSs were possible. Yeah, both photos were shot around, I don't know, 91 or so. But yeah. All right, guys. Well, it's time for me to say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you learned a lot. It was great to see everyone in the chat. Cody Bear, Luciano, Carol, Howard Pinsky. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you guys again next time. Thank you, everybody. Bye.